ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the media, and thank you for coming to our wrapping up conference on the Canadian Parliament press conference gallery. My name is Mohammed Kamel. I am the Secretary General of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council, and I am the coordinator of the Egyptian Bloc. The Egyptian Bloc who is organizing the conference today are the Egyptian Revolutionary Council, an international organization that working to returning and establish democracy in Egypt, the Egyptian Canadian Coalition for Democracy, who the pan-Canadian coalition working for returning the democracy in Egypt, and the Egyptian Home Organization, which is Montreal-based organization working on the same cause. We have today Mr. Ihab Lutaif, who is the head of the Egyptian Canadian Coalition for Democracy, and Dr. Maha Azzam, who is the head of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council, who actually at the same time we are wrapping up her visit today to Canada. I'll let you go after the word from Mr. Lutaif and Mrs. Azzam. We will have a small word in Arabic to our Arabic listeners. Thank you. Mr. Ihab.
Bonjour. Good morning. The reason that we are here is that the Egyptian Bloc has organized multiple sessions in the World Social Forum in Montreal, and that is one of the reasons that Dr. Maha Azzam joined us here as a guest speaker in one of those conferences. In those conferences, we had human rights activists and academics and journalists speak about the situation in Egypt. I will highlight among them Peggy Mason from the Rideau Institute, Joe Stork from Human Rights Watch, who was the supervisor on the report that Human Rights Watch issued in about the Rab'a massacre in Egypt, and representatives from Amnesty International and others as well. It was a very successful presence that we had in the World Social Forum. We received a lot of support from participants and from civil society. They understood much better the plight of the Egyptian people and the struggle in Egypt for democracy and for the return of a system that represents and speaks and cares about the people. It is a 3-year period now since the coup happened in Egypt, and it is 3 years this week since the Rab'a massacre happened in Egypt. And we heard many voices speaking around the world about support for an quote-unquote emerging democracy in Egypt after the coup. Well, I think it has become very clear to everybody worldwide who wants to look objectively that there is no emerging democracy in Egypt. What there is in Egypt right now is a clear, flourishing dictatorship that has no respect for human rights. It has no respect for the interest of its people. It does not respect right of objection or dissent in any way. On the contrary, it smashes it very hard. We are looking at a judiciary that is corrupt. We are looking at a media system that is extremely biased against anything that is that speaks against the current regime. And add to all this, lately, and it didn't start now, but it has become very evident that Egypt is going through an economic meltdown. An economic meltdown with a flourishing corruption that is supported by the current regime, which really means a very stark future to the Egyptian people who are trying not to even aspire to great things. They just want to have a stable daily income that can sustain them and their families. I would like to introduce also Dr. Maha Azzam to add a couple of words in the name of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council. Dr. Maha, please.
Thank you very much, Adam. Good morning. The purpose of this press conference is to draw attention to the dire situation in Egypt that we, as an Egyptian bloc and as the Egyptian Revolutionary Council, the ECCD, and the overarching Egyptian bloc that is representing here the Canadian groups, believe that our country is in crisis. that the Canadian government and Canadian Egyptians here are extremely concerned with the situation, that Egyptians throughout the world feel that the international community, civil society and parliamentarians should be increasingly aware of the escalation in human rights violations that have occurred since July the 3rd, 2013. The situation has not remained static. The situation in the prisons is dire. They are at subhuman levels. The security situation in Egypt has deteriorated. The threat of terrorism has increased threefold since the coming to power of General Sisi, who overthrew an elected president and overturned a democratic process. We are concerned in the downturn in the economy and the increasing possibility of radicalization of the youth that will determine the future path of Egypt, not towards democracy but towards greater instability, which will have repercussions on the region and the international order. We call on parliamentarians, civil society and the democratic governments of the world to, first of all, ensure that the United Nations sends a team to investigate the inhuman prison conditions in Egypt against political dissidents and put pressure on the Egyptian government to stop the systematic use of torture, and I emphasize the word systematic. 2, we call for an international investigation into the Rabaa massacre that was described by Human Rights Watch as the worst massacre in the modern history of Egypt, a massacre worse than Tiananmen Square. 3, we call on democratic governments and the Canadian government in particular to stop arms sales to Egypt and military-related sales that are used by the military against its own people. 4, we call on all democratic governments to pressure the Egyptian regime of General Sisi for freedom of assembly and freedom of expression that exists in all parts of the democratic world, and to give guarantees for the protection of protesters and to ensure legal due process. Thank you very much.
I would just echo what Dr. Maha said and repeat a support for those demands and ask the Canadian government to play a role in the international arena to support the call and the implementation of such committees of investigation and to increase its own pressure on the Egyptian government to grant the freedoms and grant the rights of people and turn the way it is treating those detained unjustly into a human prison system, but included in that, or even before that, to free and release all those who are detained for political reasons without real justification on the judicial side. I also would ask the Canadian government very, very strongly to stop the sale of any military-related equipment to the Egyptian government and to link trade to the human rights situation in Egypt, rather than we benefit from the suffering of the Egyptian people on the ground in Egypt. And last but not least, I call on the Canadian Parliament, and particularly on the Human Rights Subcommittee in the Canadian Parliament, to hold hearings about the abuse of human rights in Egypt that is systematic, and has exceeded and went beyond all expectations and all limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Azzam. Thank you, Mr. Lutaif. As we said in the beginning, with your permission, we'll have a couple of words in Arabic, and we'll turn to your questions if there is. نحييكم من البرلمان الكندي، من قاعة المؤتمرات الصحفية البرلمان الكندي بأوتاوا، وبيشرفنا وجود الإعلام معنا، ونشكركم على حضوركم معنا. المؤتمر الصحفي ده تم عقده اليوم كملخص لما تم في المنتدى الاجتماعي الدولي اللي عقد في مونتريال من 9 ل 14 أغسطس، واللي قام بإعداد البرنامج الخاص بمصر في مجموعة كتلة مصرية من 3 مؤسسات، من المجلس الثوري المصري ومن التحالف المصري المصريين الكنديين من أجل الديمقراطية وهو تحالف كندي، ومن البيت المصري الكندي وهو مجموعة تعمل في مونتريال. نحييكم ونشكركم لوجودكم معنا، ونشكر الدكتورة مها عزام اللي بتنهي زيارتها اليوم لكندا، دكتورة مها رئيس المجلس الثوري، وبنشكر مهندس إيهاب رطيف رئيس التحالف الكندي، وبندعوه انه يقدم لنا ملخص لما ألقي في المؤتمر الصحفي باللغة العربية. شكرا لكم.
شكرا. السلام عليكم. وجود الكتلة المصرية من 3 مؤسسات كما ذكر المهندس محمد كامل في المنتدى الاجتماعي الدولي الذي عقد في مونتريال من 9 إلى 14 أغسطس كان وجود قوي جدا، ضم أكثر من 6 أحداث أو مؤتمرات تكلم فيها نشطاء وتكلم فيها اختصاصيون في حقوق الإنسان وأكاديميين، بالإضافة إلى ممثلين عن المؤسسات المنظمة للكتلة المصرية. كان هناك من Human Rights Watch جو ستارك، وهو الذي كتب أو الذي نسق التقرير الخاص بربعة الذي صدر عن Human Rights Watch. كان هناك ممثلين من أمنستي انترناشونال ومن الريدو انستيتيوت، وهي كلها مؤسسات مرموقة في مجال حقوق الإنسان ودراسة حقوق الإنسان في أماكن متعددة حول العالم. وملخص ما قيل هو باختصار أننا سمعنا كثيرا عن دعم حكومات مختلفة للديمقراطية الآتية في مصر. هذا الكلام تكرر على مدى ال3 سنوات الماضية، ولكن أظن أن الوقت قد حان لترى حكومات العالم أجمع أنه ليس توجد هناك ديمقراطية ناشئة أو تتطور أو تتقدم بأي شكل من الأشكال في مصر في الوقت الحالي. كل ما هناك هو ديكتاتورية تزداد عنفا يوما بعد يوم، يزداد يوما بعد يوم عدم احترامها لحقوق الإنسان، يزداد يوما بعد يوم إخراسها لكل الأفواه التي تنطق بأي كلمة ضدها أو نقد عليها. وبالإضافة إلى كل هذا أصبح جليا للجميع أن مصر أصبحت في وضع اقتصادي متردي، وهذا ليس بالشيء الجديد أكيد، ولكنه يزداد سوءا يوما بعد يوم، بالإضافة إلى الفساد الذي يزيد هذه المشكلة الاقتصادية بأضعاف مضاعفة كل يوم. ولهذا فكما تقدمت الدكتورة مها عزام وكما تقدمنا نحن باسم التحالف المصريين الكنديين من أجل الديمقراطية بمطالب لحكومات العالم أجمع وللحكومة الكندية أن تكون هناك استقصاءات محايدة لوضع حقوق الإنسان في مصر، استقصاءات محايدة عن طريق الأمم المتحدة للوضع في السجون المصرية، لوضع السجناء. ونطالب كل الحكومات أن تضغط على الحكومة المصرية للإفراج عن السجناء السجناء السياسيين المسجونين بدون تهم أو بتهم باطلة لا أساس لها من الصحة، بالإضافة إلى أن يكون هناك ضغط دولي على الأقل في المرحلة الحالية لتحسين الظروف المشينة التي يعيش فيها أو تحتها هؤلاء السجناء. ونطالب أيضا الحكومة الكندية بالذات أن تدعم هذه المطالب، ولكن أيضا ألا تبيع أو تورد أي معدات لها علاقة بالسلاح إلى مصر، وأن تربط أي علاقات اقتصادية مع مصر بوضع حقوق الإنسان في مصر. ونطالب البرلمان الكندي وخاصة هيئة مجموعة أو لجنة حقوق الإنسان في البرلمان الكندي أن تدرس أو تعقد جلسات استماع ودراسات خاصة بوضع حقوق الإنسان في مصر في القريب العاجل. شكرا لكم.
شكرا Mr. Lataif. Any question from the media? The press statement has been distributed this morning, and I think it's clear to you all. شكرا لكم جميعا، وشكرا للحضور الإعلامي، وشكرا للدكتورة مها عزام في زيارتها لكندا، والباشمهندس إيهاب لطيف رئيس الاتحاد الكندي. Thank you all. Thanks Dr. Azam for your visit to Canada and your effort for the cause, and thank you Mr. Lutaif for the trip. Thank you.